Imagine a creature, not yet fully human, standing before a wildfire. Everything around it flees. Animals run in terror. Birds scatter in every direction, except toward it. He steps closer. For decades, we've told this story in a simple way. Cavemen discovered fire, felt its warmth, protected themselves from predators, and boom, civilization was born. But scientists who studied this story more closely have found something that changes everything. The real reason our ancestors mastered fire might not have been the cold, and it might not have been fear of animals. It may have been the stomach. And that's the story I'm about to tell. A world without fire. To understand why fire was so revolutionary, we need to go back around 2 million years, to a time when species like Homo erectus lived across Africa. At that point, no living creature on Earth controlled fire. It existed, sparked by lightning, volcanic eruptions, natural friction between dry branches, but was a wild, unpredictable phenomenon, and for nearly every animal, deadly. The diet of these early hominids was based entirely on raw food. Tough roots, fibrous meat, hard-to-digest leaves. To get enough energy, they had to spend hours a day just chewing. Comparative studies with great apes show that a chimpanzee, for example, can spend nearly half its day simply chewing raw food just to extract enough calories. In other words, eating raw was expensive in time, expensive in energy, expensive in wear on the body. And this is exactly where the official story, fire for warmth, starts to make less sense. The first archaeological clues. The oldest traces suggesting controlled fire use by hominids come from places like Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, with evidence dating back roughly 1 million years, ash, burned bones, and charred plants found deep inside the cave, far from any possibility of a wildfire having entered on its own. Other sites, like Gesher Benot Ya'aqov in Israel, also show signs of recurring fire use hundreds of thousands of years ago. What's interesting is that this evidence doesn't point to a sudden discovery, like in a movie, with a character striking 2 rocks together and shouting Eureka. It points to something much slower, generation after generation learning, little by little, to handle embers from natural fires, keeping them alive, feeding them with twigs, until finally learning to produce a flame on their own. It was a process, not a flash of genius. But the process alone doesn't answer the most important question. Why bother? Keeping a fire burning was hard work. Someone had to watch it day and night, gather wood, protect it from rain. From the standpoint of basic survival, it was an enormous energy investment. What reward could possibly be worth all that effort? The theory everyone knows, and why IT doesn't add up on its own. The most popular explanation is a familiar one. Fire supposedly emerged as protection against nocturnal predators and as a source of warmth on cold nights. That makes sense, and it probably did help. Lions, hyenas, and other large carnivores avoid fire, and it's reasonable to think ancient human groups noticed that advantage. The problem is that this explanation on its own doesn't solve a bigger mystery. Why? Among all the primates that also suffer from cold and predators, did only the human lineage take fire control so seriously that it became central to everyday life? Chimpanzees and other great apes live in regions with predators and temperature swings, but none of them, even after millions of years, has domesticated fire. This led researchers to look for a deeper explanation, something tied not to survival on the outside of the body, but to a change inside the human body itself. The reveal: fire didn't warm humans, IT fueled the brain. Here's the turning point of our story. Primatologist Richard Wrangham of Harvard University proposed a hypothesis known as the cooking hypothesis. According to this idea, the decisive factor behind humans mastering fire wasn't warmth or fear of predators, but cooked food. When food is exposed to fire, something remarkable happens. Proteins denature, starches break down, fibers rupture. This means the body spends far less energy digesting and absorbs far more calories from the same piece of food. In practice, cooking works like predigestion done outside the body. A raw tuber might require hours of chewing and still deliver little energy. The same tuber, roasted, delivers more calories in much less time, with much less effort. And this is exactly where the surprising twist lies. Coincided with a period when evidence of fire use increases, hominid brains began growing at an accelerated rate, and the human brain is an extremely energy-expensive organ. Today, the adult brain consumes about 20% of all the energy we use, even though it makes up only a small fraction of our body weight. A brain that size simply wouldn't be sustainable on a diet based only on raw food. According to this hypothesis, the caloric surplus generated by cooking may have been the fuel that allowed the human brain to grow beyond the limits of any other primate. In other words, fire may not have been mastered, first and foremost, to keep out the cold or the predators. It may have been mastered because, without realizing it, our ancestors found a way to hack digestion itself, and that silent caloric advantage may have been a true engine behind one of the greatest leaps in human evolution, the growth of our brain. The consequences no one expected. If this hypothesis is correct, the impact goes far beyond nutrition. Cooking requires time and a fixed location, which may have encouraged the formation of more stable social groups around the fire. Some researchers suggest these shared moments around the fire may have been one of the first stages for the development of language, storytelling, and even the earliest bonds resembling what we call family today. On top of that, with less time spent chewing raw food, free time opened up, time that could be used to make tools, explore territory, care for children longer, and pass knowledge between generations. It's important to say, this is a well-supported hypothesis, but it's still debated among scientists, since it's difficult to prove with absolute certainty what happened over 1 million years ago. Some researchers argue for a different timeline, suggesting that full, daily fire control only became common much later, around 400,000 years ago. But even these more cautious views agree on one point. The nutritional benefit of cooked food appears to have been decisive as soon as fire became a constant part of human life. Conclusion. So the next time you see a classic image of a caveman sitting in front of fire, seemingly just trying to keep warm, remember, behind that simple scene may lie one of the most important decisions in our evolutionary history. It wasn't only about surviving a cold night. It was about finding in fire a source of extra energy that may have literally fueled the growth of the organ that made us human. Our brain. Screen. Closing text. What if fire had never existed? Do you think we'd still be human the way we are today? If you enjoyed discovering the surprising side of our history, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, did you already know this theory, or did you also think fire was discovered just because of the cold? In the next video, I'll tell you how early humans actually learned to create fire from scratch, and that story is quite a twist too. See you next time.